Okay, everyone, can I get everyone to their seats, please, and we'll just begin. Everyone to their seats, please. Can I have everyone up standing for the national anthem, please? Thank you. Please be seated. You were singing all so well. That ending always gets everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming today to this Environment and Energy Forum. We've got a great day planned. I just want to start off by thanking Anne and also the Guildford Leagues Club for allowing us to host this event today. Thank you for all their efforts in helping us to organise this. We are going to be having a Q&A at the end today. What I would like you to do, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, please head up to Mr. or now Councillor Adam Zara. He'll be our Councillor for Campbelltown. Yes, please give him a round of applause. He worked very hard. So Councillor Adam Zara will be hosting the Q&A table. All we need you to do is at some point, get up, go down, write down your question on a notepad, and when Nick Cater hosts the Q&A later, he'll be asking out your questions. There'll also be a donations box there. If you want to contribute to the National Rational Energy Network, please do so. I'll tell you a little bit about the National Rational Energy Network, who have hosted this today. It's a grassroots national network comprising of hundreds of community groups adversely impacted by the unreliable, unaffordable, environmentally destructive wind turbines, grid solar, pumped hydro and high voltage transmission lines that are happening in their communities. But first up, we're going to get right into it. We have a member of the Federal Parliament here. She is the Federal Member for Fowler. She swept to power in 2022 on a very popular independent campaign. Significantly, she was the first Vietnamese refugee who won a Labor Heartland seat as an independent. And she has a very busy schedule, but she's been able to squeeze us in. So please welcome Ms. Dai Lee.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm actually outside of my electorate, so this is really, not meaning to step into anybody's turf, but as somebody who's quite passionate about affordable and accessible energy prices for my community, has been an issue that I have raised since my election to the Federal Parliament. I have been focusing on the cost of living since, I think, since July 2022, and I have not stopped, and I continue to ask questions and speak about the fact that the cost of living, in particular, energy prices, grocery prices, rent, and everything else has gone up for our community in Fowler and overall in Western Sydney. So I think that my engagement with my community has been obviously door knocking, I have gone door knocking to try and understand what issues impact them. So far, the majority of people have told me that obviously energy prices, petrol prices, and rent and food. I have called on the government a few times to reintroduce the fuel levy, the discounted fuel levy, in order for, especially in Western Sydney, we drive a lot. We drive long distances to work, majority of us. So for us, and of course the tolls as well, that's costing us and hurting our hip pocket. The government have refused to, but I will continue to call on the government to do something. And as you know, energy has been the most pressing concern for everybody, and we are seeing increasing electricity bills. And despite the promises by the current government to reduce the costs, I think since they've taken office, we've seen an increase. Now, I think there are quite a few key factors around the increasing of the bills. One of the major ones is, of course, the government spending money in order to have the rewiring the nation, the infrastructure for the renewable sector. I do actually, do believe also on renewable, just for your information, just that's to be upfront about that. However, I think what they've been trying to do is costing us a lot of money. One of the key factors is the solar rebate. So I don't know if any of you received solar rebate, but I think the solar rebate today is no longer fit for purpose. As we all know, solar panels are so much more cheaper to purchase nowadays, but the rebate that the government still continue to offer, it's really financing, it's pushing for high electricity prices. And we know that renters, majority of people, 46% of people rent in my electorate of Fowler. So majority of them experience these high energy prices, but they have got no other support for that. And so I think that's something that the government has to really look at. And I think one of the reasons why we're experiencing all of these issues at the moment is that the government are not consulting enough, and they're not looking at the policies that they're putting out and how that impacts on Middle Australia. For me, it's important to have a suite of energy resources to access. So we can't just put all of our eggs into one basket. It has to be a variety of resources so that we can actually, that will bring down energy prices. I know that in Victoria, for instance, and I don't know if you've heard, they're stopping gas, in homes, or even in new homes, not just new homes, but in homes. So that is going to push up prices. And gas, for me, is one of the factors that can actually, give us cheaper energy prices. And so in the federal parliament, we're trying to, a group of us, or probably only a few independents, who are pushing to continue to have gas, to continue to ensure that some of the, government invests in some of the coal mines to be still continuing so that we can actually bring the energy prices down. In other countries around the world, developing countries, I just got back from a parliamentary delegation from Vietnam who said to us that they're going to purchase our resources in order to drive their industrialization, to drive their energy, to rebuild their economy. So for me, I'm thinking here, while we're trying to, absolutely it's important for us to think of the planet that we're living in. The whole push for net zero, that is important. However, we as Australians are not benefiting from that push, and that in countries like in Vietnam, they're still able to access our resources to build their to power their energy, and we are missing out on that. So for me, I am very much somebody that would, my community is a priority. Affordability is a priority for my community, as well as accessibility. So I hope that in this energy forum, the discussion is about how we can ensure that there's a diversity of energy resources for the Australian community. And one of the key energy is critical in powering, for instance, manufacturing in my community, and manufacturing employs 40% of our population compared to Australia-wide of 5.9%. And if we don't have cheaper energy, we will not be able to sustain many of our manufacturing. Well, our manufacturing sector is shut down anyway. But it's very important, therefore, for me, that we have cheaper energy for businesses, for small businesses, for residents in our community. I think I'll leave it there because I know that there'll be others who will be, who've got more knowledge in terms of energy in this group. But that's just to give you a perspective from me as an independent MP and what I've been trying to do in the federal parliament. So thank you for having me here. I'll probably be leaving soon, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to take a few questions now before I leave, Steve.
There's another mic. You hold that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just came back from Vietnam with visiting with I think the Prime Minister and also the General Secretary. They did talk about getting our resources in order to build more energy power plant there. There was no mention of nuclear when I was there, so I'm not aware of that. But certainly they're building more power plants in order to obviously power Vietnam. It's as becomes more city. They're building more cities.
Hello. Do you think Australia should lift the ban on nuclear?
I think I've expressed in one of the interviews that I've given that I think we should have a conversation around it and to explore. But I think what we have now in terms of coal, in terms of renewable energy, we can do it more efficiently. But absolutely, we need to have an opportunity to have a conversation at least and understand the impact of that, what's good, what's not good. We just need to have a conversation around many of our energy sources that we have.
And we just need a big, loud voice in the mic too.
Hello, Daly. Thank you so much for that presentation. Paul Nettlebeck from the seat of Mackellar on the Northern Beaches. My question is about the unholy alliance between the Teals, Labor and the Greens. Knowing that our local member has voted with the Greens 80% of the time, is this unholy alliance driving up energy prices?
Well, well, I don't know about the Teals. I know that the Greens have been pushing for no coal and no gas, and it's something that is quite, it's very hard because they're very vocal in there, and when I stand up, I said this, we have debated about that because I actually am for gas, especially in my community in Fowler. Everybody uses gas to cook, the restaurants, the small businesses, so therefore it cannot not have gas, right? But that is something that the conversation has been driven by the Greens, and yes, obviously some of members of the Northern Beaches and North Sydney have actually supported that. But that's their individual choice, and that's the great thing about living in a democracy. We all have individual choices and they speak, I suppose, on behalf of their community. I speak on behalf of my community. I go door knocking. I know what my community needs, so I assume that most MPs would know what their community needs. So that's up to Dr. Sophie Scomp, her decision on Mackellar.
You mentioned earlier that you believe in net zero. I'm wondering on what scientific basis you believe in that. As a physicist who understands Schwarzschild's radiation equations, I can tell you that there's no scientific basis, and nearly every one of the world's leading physicists would agree with that.
Thank you. So I think when I said net zero, not meaning from that is my scientific knowledge, what I meant by that was that we should all work towards leaving this earth in a better way for our children. And how do we do that? How do we ensure that we have less emission into the sky, into the, look, it's about how do you just have a greener and cleaner world to live in. But it's not like I'm saying, that this is what obviously politicians, governments have talked about net zero. But yes, what are some of the practical ways we can, do to ensure that we use the different resources that we have and that we don't put all of our eggs into one basket. And that's being pragmatic about it, that's all. Just how do we make that and not having such opposing perspectives and views and one side is right or the other side is wrong. It's about, I think it's the grey in between. I think there's a grey in between. Maybe as a scientist, you don't believe there's no grey in between. But you do have, we do have theories. As you know, I did, I think, a few months of science where you have a hypothesis. Will this work or not? You test them out. If it doesn't work, then you try another. So it's about that hypothesis. What can we do? How should we do it better? That's all.
Well, firstly,
Big loud voice.
Firstly, thank you for starting with the national anthem. Fabulous. Julie Anthony's tempo could have been slightly quicker, but it was a while ago anyway. Secondly, will you vote with the coalition if it comes to a vote in the Parliament for nuclear?
Sorry, this is better. Okay. For me, I will, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in the next federal election, but who I vote for will be based on what benefits it'll be for my community as a member of Fowler. That's, for me, is a priority. What resources, what infrastructure, what funding have that, whichever government will be in power, if I happen to be in that position. It might be the Tills who might be in the position of holding the balance of power. I don't know. We've got no idea. But for me, as a member of Fowler, of course, I would make sure that my Fowler community will be prioritised in the decision of the government of the day. But I won't hold them ransom. It's about having a conversation and being pragmatic about it. One last question. I've been told by my advisor, and I've been told down here as well, we've got one last question because of time.
Thanks for your address. You said you supported renewables. You said that cost of living is the number one issue in your electorate. We know that renewables are the number one issue forcing up the cost of living prices. You said that you'd support a mix in the energy market. What would you prefer to have in the energy mix to help blunt the effect on cost of living of renewables?
Look, I suppose for me, solar panels. I do have solar panels, and I have to declare my husband is here, who is in the renewable solar panel industry. He's done that for the last 10 plus years, and I think that is, and so many people now have got solar panels on their roofs. And we have got, Australia's one of the best countries in the world that we can capture energy. But that's not the only solution. We still have coal, and I think we need to make sure that we reinvest back in some of those power, coal mines, because obviously it's deteriorating job security, all of that, it's impacting. We've spoken to many of the miners who've come to us to say, because there's no security and certainty in that sector, a lot of them are concerned about loss of jobs. And the other part is, people have spoken about hydrogen, but hydrogen I know is very expensive. And because there's one hydrogen plant just outside of my electorate that I have visited. So those are the three things that I'm aware of that could help. But I think the cost is because the government is spending so much in, for instance, trying to rewire the nation, one part, and then spending in many other areas that's driving up the costs. Gas, for instance, why is it that in the East Coast we don't get the cheaper gas prices? What's happening there? And we're trying to get the government to look at why can't we get a cheaper, gas prices here in the East Coast compared to, say, Western Australia. So there are many things that I think if we can be more efficient and look at how we can improve what's currently working, improve that, I think that can come down. But, it's sitting down and working out with some of the industry experts and finding ways to actually making energy cheaper for consumers. That's it. Thank you.
As I said before, Diley's on a very tight schedule, so she'll be having to leave us now. But while we have her here, please give her a big round of applause. If only we could have a few more local members in this area come and answer questions of the constituents, it would be fantastic. So thank you for Di. I just want to go through some of the exhibitors that we have today. Now, you'll probably notice all the tables in this room over here. Now, during the break and at the end, you'll have an opportunity to come and visit those tables. That is a big reason why we host this forum, so rural and regional community groups can come to City and show you guys what they're facing out in their areas with a lot of these projects that we'll be talking about today. So please, when you get the opportunity, go out there, please converse with them, support them, just maybe even if you have to give them a pat on the back or a big hug or something like that, please do so, because they're also, that's a big reason why we're doing this event today. Also want to remind you about the Q&A table. If you have any questions, we won't be able to have the microphone for future speakers, but we will be having a Q&A at the end, so the way to do it is to write down your questions at the back there. I also want to acknowledge ADH TV, who's going to be live streaming this today, so you will be able to watch it back on their platform. So thank you to ADH and Nick Cater and everyone there for doing that. But we'll move on to our next speaker. His name is Paul Vallejo. Now, Paul is an aerospace and nuclear engineer who worked a decade at NASA. Now, before you ask, he does believe that we went to the moon. But Paul has been a vocal advocate for nuclear energy, having appeared on several podcasts, independent media networks, and also delivered a number of addresses to other forums like this and other symposiums. So please welcome Paul Vallejo.
Nuclear power, safe, reliable, banned. Our public climate and energy debate is not about truth, it's about narrative. In order to maintain the narrative, scientists are censored if they go off script, skeptical media is canceled, inconvenient data is manipulated or changed. The actual scientific method tests hypotheses and gathers data. But what we have today often is narrative science. Narrative science only cites studies and data that support a pre-existing conclusion. It confuses scientific consensus with data and launches Sorry? There we go. I have to do both at the same time, and it launches ad hominem attacks on people for disagreement, calling them such things as climate deniers. Real science does not argue from conclusions. It invites falsification. Today, I wear this coat. It says, "The Science." I do this to mock the institutions and the narrative gatekeepers. I joke that when I wear this cloak of scientism, I'm unchallengeable. But in practice, the science is never settled. Narrative news always echoes the talking points of powerful interests and finds only the experts that will support these pre-approved conclusions. Green energy is also a narrative. In many ways, green energy is nothing of the sort. It's not green. Today, we'll explore more of the counter-narrative that is not often published. Nuclear energy also has a narrative and a counter-narrative. A little bit about me. I have 3 science degrees. My engineering degree was a combination of nuclear engineering and aerospace engineering. I worked at NASA for 10 years. One of the things that we studied was the feasibility and safety of a nuclear rocket. One thing to know about nuclear and chemical energy are fundamentally different. All the energy you see around you, apart from the sunshine, comes from chemical energy, where electron shells are being changed in atoms. Nuclear energy is the only thing that fundamentally alters the nucleus of atoms. You have fusion, where in the sun, hydrogen combines to create helium and energy, and in our nuclear power plants, atoms are split to create energy. The main difference that is really important when it comes to this is the energy density of different forms of power. Chemical energy has between 10 and 100 megajoules per kilogram. Nuclear energy, millions to tens of millions. Because of this energy density, you can have far less waste for a given amount of power. But sometimes radiation scares people. The thing is, you can't avoid it. Natural radiation is everywhere. It's from cosmic rays from space. It's in our soil from uranium. Even your fundamental food sources have radiation. There's something called the banana equivalent dose, because 120 parts per million of potassium is radioactive potassium. Every banana gives you 0.1 microsieverts of radiation. There are 4 fundamental types of radiation from nuclear fission: alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays, and neutrons. And exterior sources of radiation can be shielded fairly easily. Alpha rays cannot penetrate a piece of paper. Beta rays can't penetrate thin aluminum. Gamma rays can't penetrate lead, and neutrons can't penetrate water or concrete. So as long as you have the external source, you're actually quite safe. As long as there is a properly passive safety nuclear reactor, I would be happy to live next to it. Gamma rays, what they are, they don't turn you into the Hulk. They're just very, very high energy light waves. Neutrons are what we use to continue the fuel cycle. A neutron will split a uranium-235 atom, splitting the atom and producing more neutrons and energy. What do you want out of your power supply? And this is very key. You want low cost, of course, but you also want reliable supply and you want safe supply. As far as reliable supply goes, what you want is domestic sources. And this is where Australia really shines. We have everything we need. Australia is the nuclear fuel superpower of the world, with about 1/3 of the world's uranium reserves. And we have massive other sources of energy as well. Whereas our unreliable power comes from, for instance, windmill magnets come from rare earth mining, and China is the major supplier. In terms of smoothing out the unreliable power, we have to import cobalt from the Congo, much of which is mined with child labor. Next, you want baseload power. The unreliable wind and solar is a roll of the dice. If it's a sunny day, if it's a windy day, it's a roll of the dice. but demand has to be met every day at all times of day to avoid blackouts. Nuclear can provide baseload power, rain or shine. And when wind and solar have a bad day, who's going to party like it's 1699? Candlelight dinners sound romantic, but what about hospitals, freezers, traffic lights? The next thing you want to know is our power supply safe? And don't judge nuclear by old designs. When Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island happened, this was the state of our computers and our telephones. Some of us remember this. What was the examples of wind and solar power generation during that time? There wasn't any. So we should fairly compare modern technology to modern technology. And what you want out of your nuclear power plants, out of any power, you don't want to use active safety. That's what they had back many decades ago. Active safety requires you to do something if something goes wrong. What you want is passive safety, which doesn't require you to do anything. Well, how does that work, you might say? Passive safety relies on physics, kind of like if you have a dam that is getting too much water. Water will go into the spillway without anyone needing to do anything. No one needs to run around with their hair on fire. It automatically diverts the water into the spillway so it doesn't overtop the dam. The proposed power plant by Peter Dutton is the AP1000, which it's a Generation 3+ reactor, has 72 hours of passive safety. No one needs to do anything for 72 hours, by which point the power level has already gone down more than 99%. Nuclear is already the safest way to make reliable power when it comes to accidents and air pollution. The next thing you want to know is about environmental safety. And here we have a personal note. What is a boy from the Bronx doing 12,000 miles away from where he was born to talk to you about nuclear power? It's been a winding road. I've been to 50 countries. Australia was the place that first place I came that felt like home. I fell in love with the people, I fell in love with the place, I fell in love with the nature here. And I can't stand what's being done to our economy, our people, our local environment, our farms. I'm doing what I can, and thank you all for coming here and doing what you can. When it comes to nuclear power, as far as the energy density goes, one thing to keep in mind is 1 pinky's worth of fuel rod will power anyone's life for a decade. That's the energy density allows a far lower volume of waste than anything else. Meanwhile, with the unreliable power, you have to mine the lithium, you have to mine the cobalt, you have to mine the silica. And silica mining gives you silicosis. It's a cancer-causing, and that's on the production side. On the recycling side, on the waste side, recycling is mostly a fantasy. This goes into dumps that are going to be toxic pretty much forever, whereas at least nuclear waste decays over time, and even then, most of it can be recycled or burned up in advanced Generation 4 reactors. Solar panels will generate megatons of toxic trash. The only thing that recycles well among green space is narratives, stories. They recycle that crap all the time, right? How many times have I heard the Arctic ice is disappearing? I hear it every 5 years. How many times have you heard the Maldives is going underwater? In 2009, they thought it was going underwater. They said it was going underwater. 2015, they said it was going under. They built 5 new airports, right? They recycle the narrative all the time. Land use is enormous with the unreliable power. So then we kind of come to the crux of the matter. Is what we're talking about net zero? We export 200 million tons of thermal coal to Asia every year. That's enough to generate 500 terawatts of electricity. That's double what we use. So we export reliable, cheap coal to Asia. We import unreliable, expensive energy, foreign, farm-destroying, koala-killing. So the people in Asia that get to burn now, don't get me wrong, they're doing the smart thing. They're importing our coal to be burned cheaply and reliably at 9 cents a megawatt hour, while they're exporting to us unreliable power at either 22 cents or I pay 40 cents, right? So there are only 2 practical ways to get to net zero. One is with reliable energy. One is to use baseload nuclear power that is reliable using passive safety. The other thing, a way to do it, is to take half the coal we export to Asia, bring it right